Hey guys, what's up? It's iFlynn here. Today we are going to be talking about the fact that trials or raids are being removed from Warframe on February 28th. So DE Megan went ahead and put together a big forum post, which I'll have linked in the description below. We're going to be reading through it and I'll give you sort of my thoughts and opinions as we read the entire thing, because there's some points in here which I want to pick up on because I feel like some of them kind of contradict themselves. So we'll talk about it in a little bit, but let's just go ahead and jump through the introduction and stuff like that. So we're not going to bother reading the, hey, everybody, 5 years of Warframe, woohoo, because we all know how long Warframe's been around. So to get right to the point of what you're reading, on February 28th, all trials, the Law of Retribution, the Nightmare, Law of Retribution, and the Jordas Verdict will be temporarily put to rest, much like Dark Sector's Armistice for the time being. So this is an interesting point, because Dark Sectors was a system which basically created a civil war between players, because it was a game mode that was created for clans and alliances to sort of fight against one another or take control of a Dark Sector, right? So a clan or an alliance would build a solar rail, they would deploy that solar rail to a Dark Sector of their choice, and then they would go into like a battle with the other clan or alliance, which players could participate in by basically like playing against other players or playing against the specters of other players, and then players would just play through that, and then whichever clan got the most support would basically win. Okay, so there was that, and that prevented players from playing the actual node. It was overall just a very bad system. So they eventually got rid of it and were just like, here's Dark Sector nodes, you can play them, you get more resources. But the other big kicker from those was it actually took resources away from players who played on them. So like if you played it, you would actually lose a percentage of your credits and resources to the clan that owns said specific node, right? So they did away with that, and now we have the current Dark Sector system that we have, and it's fine, it's dandy. But the thing is, like, they're talking about, bringing raids back eventually, but they then compare it to Dark Sectors, which was removed 2 years ago, and we're only now seeing the Dark Sectors return into the game because of an accidental leak that the Rebecca did on the Dev Workshop stream, where they were showing off the new Warframe changes, right? So I thought it was kind of interesting that they mentioned the Dark Sectors in this post. So it's kind of different in my opinion, because Dark Sectors, there was something inherently wrong with those that affected the player base, where the raids, it seems more of a developer issue, right? So it's more frustration on the development side of things than the player side of things, but we'll talk a little bit more about that as we continue. So they say this will happen first on PC and then soon after on consoles due to needing a cert process, which is pretty straightforward. If you recall, Dark Sectors was a system that we were not happy with, and the maintenance on a system like such isn't constructive to continue changing when bigger goals are on the plate. So I'm assuming that they're like, okay, so we're going to be removing Dark Sector so we can work on bigger, better things type of excuse. And they're going to use that same excuse for raids. So let's just continue reading. So they say on May 18th, 2015, in update 16.0, we introduced the Law of Retribution trial with the Jordas Verdict hot on its trail on October 29th, 2015 in update 17.9.1. These are both 48 player trials with multiple phases, puzzles, and tons of mayhem, the good kind, of course. As players, this was a daily source of rallying teamwork in order to gain that coveted arcane. The dissection of ultimate tactics to conquer the trial was something we welcomed and were thrilled to watch develop over time. So basically just giving you guys a brief history of the raids, how they're introduced and the tactics and stuff, like how they're happy to see players, developing different methods of completing the raids and stuff like that. Like I remember watching Megami livestream whenever it first came out. We were using, it was like crush mag builds or something to hold enemies in place. Like we had a Nova using M Prime to keep the enemies slow, and then we had a crush mag just throwing them down on the ground so they couldn't get up and stuff like that. That was interesting to say the least, but now we've made it so that we can run the Law of Retribution with 4 players, which is kind of embarrassing because, I mean, it's not really a raid at that point in my opinion, but we'll continue. On numerous dev streams, we have mentioned or discussed the future of trials. On DevStream 75, Scott mentioned that we are looking to repurpose existing raid content to make the game mode accessible for lower level players, while also preparing them for this endgame content as they continue to progress. So that statement to me doesn't really make any sense, because I wouldn't really recommend a newer player jumping into a raid, because they're not going to understand the mechanics of a raid to begin with, at least how they stand right now. So if I were to read the quote again, we are looking to repurpose existing raid content to make the game mode accessible for lower level players, while also preparing them for this end game content as they continue to progress. So it's interesting, that statement is kind of interesting, because it's like, oh yeah, we want new players to play this, but we want this to prepare them for end game content, which is, I don't know, it's kind of a weird statement in my opinion, because it's like raids should be like end game content. So are you preparing the newer players for raids, or are you preparing the newer players for something else by using raids to prepare them for the end game content, that type of thing? So kind of confusing, at least to me. I don't really understand what they mean by that, but we'll keep on reading. They say we've decided to address that. In an upcoming mainline update this week on PC, Shrine of the Eidolon, we will be adding Arcanes as a reward to the tier list. So, of course, there's going to be new Eidolons added into the game, which we're going to be able to kill. So that's basically what they're talking about. These Eidolons are going to drop these Arcanes, which you could farm in the raids previously. So there's that. Taking down a tier list mirrors the tactics of a trial in terms of teamwork and communication, but can also be done as a lower level player if properly prepared. Now, that's a statement that I 110% disagree with, because there's a lot that comes into consideration whenever it comes to taking down an Eidolon. You can jump into trials a lot earlier than you can with killing an Eidolon, because to kill an Eidolon, you have to make sure that you have your amp, which you can only get after you complete the War Within. And your amp is for like a different mechanic, which you unlock by playing through the game and getting to like the later planets. So I'm not going to spoil anything, but you need to have those systems unlocked before you can even do that type of content. So I disagree with that statement like almost 100% there. So it doesn't really make any sense to me, but you know, there's that. So, let me just find where I was reading it again. So, taking down a tier list mirrors the tactics of a trial in terms of teamwork and communication, but can also be done as a lower level player if properly prepared. Adding trial arcanes as a reward from the tier list is the first step in the overall plan to temporarily put trials to rest. So, you know, they're completely removing trials out of the game, and this is like their way of saying, hey, you can still get the rewards from trials from the Eidolons, which, you know, it's interesting that they do that, because that sort of implies that they know the Arcanes are the only reason that people ever did trials. And even at that, like, Arcanes aren't like something you need. Like, you can go for the entire game and continue to play the game without having an Arcane. Like, I'm a Master Rank 24 player, almost 25, and the only Arcane I use is Arcane Guardian, and that's because it's an Arcane which requires very little effort to get the proc to happen, and it's also like a pretty decent benefit because I get more armor just for being shot. So, you know, it's a pretty good Arcane, but I wouldn't go out of my way to farm anything else. Like, those Arcane Energized sets, like, that's way too much effort for me to even be bothered for, like, such, I wouldn't say a minimalistic reward, but just something that I don't need, because, you know, we have other means of, like, restoring our energy and stuff in the game, which are just so beneficial. So, you know, personally, Arcanes to me are just, like, why bother? But yeah, let's continue reading. Please note that we're also looking at buffing some Arcanes, which is good, which will give players more of an incentive, but even at that, still, there's still no reason to go and pick them up, right? Because you basically already have everything that you're ever going to need in Warframe just by progressing through and completing the star chart, getting your Warframes, you know, your focus and stuff like that, and you should be good to go. But yeah, let's keep on reading. This is not the end to trials. Our designers have put in an incredible amount of blood, sweat, and tears into creating, fixing, and maintaining trials. Now, that's a statement that I can definitely agree with, which is going to piss off a lot of veteran players, because a lot of veteran players feel like they haven't done a lot whenever it comes to trials and stuff like that. But I remember whenever it comes to streaming, just from streaming the game, I was playing a raid one day, and there was a bug that happened to do with Vehek in the final stage, and DE Sasuke and DE Taylor just randomly appeared in my chat, and they were like, yo, Flynn, send us the EE log and we'll fix this issue. And this wasn't whenever the raids first came out. This is years after the raid came out, and they're like, oh, there's this issue right here, we want to fix this. Like, we want to actually do this. So I'm not going to stand for anyone saying that they haven't tried with trials, because they have definitely tried to fix bugs and stuff like that, but there are a lot of bugs in trials which seem so easy and obvious to fix. But then again, I'm not a game developer, so I don't know. So just to kind of give you guys an example of what I'm talking about, there has been a bug with the bottom left and right hand doors in the first stage of the Law of Retribution that has been around since trials were released, and it's basically just to do with the fact that you can walk through those doors without having to stand on the buttons, which standing on buttons, as bad as it is to say, is kind of a mechanic in the raids because it's the only thing that you're really required to do as a player. So there's that. That hasn't been fixed, and that's been a bug since release. So yeah, that's kind of mind-blowing. So I can see where people are coming from, but I definitely know for a fact that developers have put in work whenever it comes to the trials, and it's not to say that they haven't tried. So yeah, I won't stand for anyone saying that, you know, they haven't tried. Maybe they could have put in more effort, but they've definitely tried to fix it. So yeah, our designers have put an incredible amount of blood, sweat, and tears into creating, fixing, and maintaining trials, not to mention that the blood, sweat, and tears you as a community have put into them. The upkeep of trials in a world where so many bigger plans are in mention are taking much needed brain power and time. So with the community thing, I can really understand because there's the Warframe Raid school bus, there is the time trackers and stuff like that, which you can go to and look at like your fastest time for Law of Retribution or Jorda's Verdict. Like, the community has put in a lot of effort to make trials like as much of an enjoyable experience as possible. There's like speedrunning cultures and stuff made around them, and that's where a lot of the sort of hate is coming from whenever it comes to this, or the disagreement or disappointment, is because those communities are now being alienated because that's no longer like a social thing that you can do. It's something that's been taken away from Warframe. It's a daily activity which you can't do anymore, and I have to agree with them because, like, you know, it's something that I did with my clan. It was, you know, just basically like a social interaction, kind of forced me to, you know, be social with my clan, and it gave me a reason to do so, right? And so it was cool instead of just having sorties and stuff like that to do. So, you know, there's that, and I can totally 110% understand why people are annoyed at that. So let's just get the rest of the post done. As a warm thank you for almost 2+ years of commitment to trials, everyone who has participated up to its temporary closure will recover, or will receive, I don't know where I got recover from, a fancy new version, I can't speak now, a fancy new version of the Savati Sakari badge. So basically the badge that you get for completing the raid, you're going to get a fancy new version of it. Cool. One separate from, okay, basically just saying, yeah, that's that. Knowing you are inevitably helping shape the change of Warframe. So yeah, I'm pretty sure they said somewhere, yeah, so this is the next line. We welcome this thread as a home of constructive feedback to where you would improve trials, raid school bus, I'm looking at you, which is basically the culture which is built around helping new players complete raids and stuff like that. We have some top level ideas to revisit in the distant future. That's a key point that I want to talk about in terms of a redesign, but welcome the ideas of a 2+ year mechanic that a good amount of Tenno are familiar with. So yeah, they talk about the dark sector stuff as well. Well, they don't talk about it, but they basically show that the Rebecca leaked it. And then they say, in conclusion, we're incredibly grateful for 4 years, or for your years of love and commitment towards our trials. Just know that this is not the end. So yeah, of course, it's not the end, because you intend on adding it back in at some point, but we don't know when you're going to ever add it back in, and we don't know how long the trials are going to be gone for, and what you're planning on doing, which is why a lot of people are pissed off. It's because we've been left in the dark, right? I'm not personally pissed off because I don't play trials enough, but I can understand why people are annoyed. I understand why people feel alienated, and I also understand why DE have made this move, because like there's a lot of things that they can add into the game, or they're trying to add into the game, which can indirectly affect how trials are played. Just for a simple example, take, for example, the inclusion of operators, right? So as an operator, you basically are given the ability to jump around as a second version of yourself. So you need less players to complete the second stage of the Law of Retribution, right? Because one player can stand in their Warframe on one button, and then he can also stand on another button with their operator, right? So basically half in the amount of players you need to complete that stage. So, you know, that's just an indirect effect that adding in the new operator system had on trials, right? And that is what I feel like they're trying to get at here. Like, they want to add a system which will in some way, shape, or form affect how trials are played indirectly, and it's not something that they necessarily want to deal with. That's what my take on this is. And if it's not something like that there, then it's something to do with the coding end of it, because they want to add something in differently that they're gonna have to work on behind the scenes and not let us know. And removing trials is probably the best way to do that, because they said that they have plans for it and they want to start off on a fresh sheet, because they've collected obviously data and stuff like that to do with it, and they want to just have a fresh start at it and try it again, which I can't knock them for, but it's just, it would have been nice if they had to give us more information whenever it comes to that, because like I said, this has alienated a lot of different communities. You have people who are quitting the game. You have people who are saying that Warframe's a dead game and stuff like that, which, Warframe being a dead game, it's currently one of the top 10 most played games on Steam right now. So I don't quite know where that statement comes from, but, whatever, I guess. But, having the trials in the game is definitely a big positive for a lot of people, because it gives them a reason to come back, gives them a reason to interact. Personally, I don't understand why they're removing the trials at this point in time. I don't get it. I don't get it at all, because there's no inherent bad thing that trials currently puts forward. Like, there's no negative effect that it has on players like the dark sectors did. Like, it created a civil war between players. That's why the dark sectors was removed, and that's why people were okay with dark sectors being removed. Where trials, it's nothing but a positive at the minute. Like, there's no downside to it apart from the fact that it's buggy and the fact that people complain about there being bugs in trials. But even at that, that's a very vocal minority, but I can understand why they remove it, but I can also understand why people are pissed off, and rightly so. So what I'm interested in hearing is your opinions on the subject matter. Have you even played a raid in Warframe? If you haven't played a raid in Warframe, what could DE do to sort of communicate that raids are in Warframe or were in Warframe? If you played Warframe, you didn't go back to it, why did you not go back to it? Stuff like that. That's all stuff which I want to know, and it helps me sort of form feedback, which I can shoot over to DE Taylor, and that can hopefully help the developers create better raids in the future if they plan to do so. What has a lot of people worried is the fact that they're comparing this to Dark Sectors, and Dark Sectors, of course, like mentioned beforehand, those took 2 years before they even got mentioned again. So that's what people are fearing is going to happen with raids. So, there's not a lot we can really say about it, honestly. All we can really do is wait, and all we can really do is voice our opinion that we don't want raids to go. It's going to be very interesting to see if they talk about it in tomorrow's dev stream. So let me know if you guys are excited for that. Well, I guess today's dev stream, because I'm recording this at 1 in the morning, but that's besides the point. Yeah, so leave your thoughts and opinions in the comment section below. It's a saddening change. Like, I don't want raids to go. Raids are cool. Some of my funniest moments in Warframe happened in raids. So, like the endless amount of time that I have spent yelling at some players because they jump off the button on purpose on stream, the amount of funny moments that's made, it's crazy. So definitely the community engagement part there super upsets me, but as for raids being a game mode, I don't care if they're in the game or not. What I do care about is it takes away content from the game that I could do on a daily basis, and I can't point at it and say, hey, this is actually in Warframe. It's not there anymore, and it just makes a lot of content that was made for raids and stuff like that irrelevant. So sad to see them go, but it's also maybe a step in the right direction for DE at least, because they're cleaning up their content, they're cleaning up their act, which I definitely understand as a content creator myself, obviously not on a corporate level like they are. But I understand the change, and it's just going to be interesting to hear your thoughts and opinions on it. So let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. Like the video if you liked it, dislike it if you dislike it, hit subscribe for more Warframe videos, and I'll see you guys in the next one.